So I'm coming to you by postcard again. Hello, everyone all around the world. I haven't shaved in about a month. I kind of just shaved around here a little and up around here when I went to school last week, teaching at the university I teach at. But I usually sing at weddings on the weekend, and this is the first month I haven't sang at any weddings. So, first month in 2 years. So, anyway, I got to make more videos. So, like all my videos, watch all my videos because I need some more money. Okay, but anyway, the longer you watch, the more you watch, the more money I get. So please help me out here because I'm only getting about $50 to $100 a month now on my YouTube videos, but they keep going up. So it started at about $25 a month, and it's all the way up to 50. It's doubled in the last few months. So I keeps getting more and more people watching my videos. So that's cool. I love you guys all. So, anyways, this is my third installment of the book that is so amazing. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but whether it's true or not, it's got amazing stuff in there that is true, whether the underlying premises of the whole book is true or whether there's secret encodings in it, because there are a bunch of secret encodings in the book, which I'm finding more and more than even the so-called encoder that said he encoded the book have found. So you got to go check out the book. Anyway, it's called Billy's Back. It supposedly is excerpts from the memoirs of Billy Shears, and supposedly Billy Shears took over the part of Paul McCartney after Paul McCartney died on September 11th, 1966. So this is part 3. I'm just getting a little more into it, slowly but surely. I'm going to read the whole book again when I'm finished. I'm about more than halfway done with the book now. But anyway, Paul McCartney started having these visions, as I talked about in the previous ones, about dying for about a year or more. And he started telling everyone he's going to die, and he needs everyone to help him out to prepare for the switch to a new person, because he already found who he wanted to find. And while he was finding this person, his music started to become more imaginative and more creative, which is the one of his most, up until that time, 66, which was one of his most amazing songs, or on the last album before he died, which according to this book he died in 66, would be the Revolver. And the reason they called it the Revolver is he knew he was going to die, and he was revolving the band and he didn't know. He thought he was going to be die with a revolver, but that was actually prophetic, seeing the future of John dying by a revolver, because that's what he thought he was going to die by, but he ended up dying in a car accident. So here's what happened. He wrote the song, James Paul McCartney died in a church and was buried along with his name. He decided to change it before they put it in the revolver to Eleanor Rigby, because they didn't want to put out this story before it actually happens. They weren't sure if it was going to happen. So they had actually recorded some recordings, and they were going to redub it over if he did die before the revolver was released, which he thought he was going to die before the revolver was released. And the song was going to be called, Eleanor Rigby, no, it was going to be called James Paul McCartney, which is his legal name. James Paul McCartney died in a church and was buried along with his name. And that was going to be the clue that he died, because they put so many clues in after he actually died in all the albums, and so many people did get him and some people didn't get him, and they've been arguing ever since. And even all of his Billy Shears as Paul McCartney, all of his solo albums also. Band on the Run talks about the whole episode from the time he died on I think it was Thursday, September 11th of 66, Friday, Saturday, to try to contact all the other Beatles members to tell about, we can't put this story out in the media that he died. We have to cover it up every way we can. So they actually paid for the guy who was going to write the story, which he came out in another song. I forget which song it is now. But Band on the Run, which he released when his solo after he left the Beatles, was all about the band being on the run. And so was the song She's Leaving Home. Friday morning, she is far away, means she's already dead. She's up in heaven. But Saturday, and many other songs that say, "This Wednesday papers never come." What song is that? I forget. Tuesday morning, we're wives without a suitcase. See how they run. That song was also about the band was running in circles, trying to figure out how they can cover up the media from exposing that Paul McCartney died, how they could pay off all the reporters, how they could pay off the police officers and everyone who saw the death. The problem was they saw this guy who they thought was Paul McCartney, dead, but they could not. Even his parents came to see it and said, I can't recognize that as my son. I don't even know that he owns a Aston Martin, because his parents didn't even know he had an Aston Martin, because at this time he was becoming so famous that he wasn't even talking to his parents that often. But he was telling his parents that he was going to die, and he was telling his whole family, and his brother was in on this whole thing that he might die, and if he does, he requested that he switch it over to this lookalike, and he already found the lookalike, which was Billy Shears from the Peppercorns. He was Sergeant Pepper of the Peppercorns. Okay, so every song after that almost has references to it. And even in The Walrus, later on, the next song after The Walrus, he says, I gave you the clue, the walrus was Paul. So if you look at a lot of the encoded messages, and he told everyone, oh, I'm just writing nonsense lyrics. I am he as you are me, and we are all together, was not only a reference to Jesus Christ and to all the other prophets that John Lennon thought was a joke, that you should singing Hare Krishna, because he thought all the Hare Krishna, he went to go see the Hare Krishna guys, the founders of Hare Krishna or whatever they were, and everyone called them gurus and stuff, and he said they're not gurus, they're just normal people, but every one of us are enlightened beings. So he knew that at the time. So singing Hare Krishna, he says in that, I am the walrus, and all these other bad things that people were doing in the name of following some guru, which he says, I am he as you are me, and we are all together in the walrus. What that means is, I am Paul, you are Paul, we are Paul. That was Paulism, became the religion of the Beatles after Paul died, because they really worshipped everything because of his prophecy. He knew that he was going to be shot by a revolver. That's what he thought, but actually that was the prophecy he had for John Lennon, was going to be shot by a revolver. He was going to die in a car accident. So he had all these prophetic dreams during the recording of the Revolver and before the Revolver and during the Revolver tour. So they kept thinking, like, should we not put him on a plane? Because he said, I'm going to die in a plane. Okay, we're gonna send you on a boat. And he's like, okay, I'll go on the plane, whatever. I don't think I'm going to die on a plane. And then he said, no, I can't go on a he was going to go some other plane route. And he said, okay, we'll just send you by car and we'll send everyone else by plane. He was freaking out about everywhere because he kept having these dreams about he was going to die either in a plane, get shot, in a car, all these other things. So anyway, I'm just kind of getting little bits of what I remember from reading this, and it's kind of all in my head. So one of the reasons why they wrote the song, Baby You're a Rich Man, Baby You're a Rich Man Too. Paul McCartney, or the new Paul McCartney, wrote that part. It was a song, a separate song. And then John Lennon wrote a separate song, which was going to be called How Does It Feel to Be One of the Beautiful People? But then they ended up putting these two songs together, and the reason they did is they realized it was about the same memory they had from at the time when John Lennon was finally told on Friday that Paul died on Thursday, and he had a day to like contemplate. He was freaking out, he was crying, he was screaming, he was saying, it can't be true, you're lying to me. I want to see his car, I want to see his body. But they said no one could even identify his body. Even his dentist couldn't, because his whole head got decapitated. The car caught on fire. So his parents couldn't even identify his body. His dentist couldn't even identify his teeth. That's how fucked up he was. The girl that was in the car with him, which he picked up, who became, one of the songs was about this girl. She's Leaving Home was about her. Because she was leaving home with a suitcase, but the suitcase never arrived, which is another song. Suitcase never, I forget what song that is. But anyways, also John Lennon's suitcase got stolen that weekend in the hotel he checked in that was full. He had to wait for a room. And they almost kicked him out of that room because he started screaming so much in the middle of the night, and he was just fighting and smashing things because they told him John Lennon or Paul McCartney died, and he didn't want to believe it, and he thought it was a practical joke on him. Because they were all joking with each other at the time, and everyone in the band was kind of like pissing each other off with practical jokes, and everyone was fighting over, because they were just they were touring. They just got back from touring on the Revolver, and they just went night after night off, just touring all over the U.S. Actually, they did a couple concerts the same day in different cities, which was crazy. So they pushed themselves to the total limit, and they said they won't tour anymore. And then right after that, Paul McCartney dies. Right after he slams the door and leaves the studio because the producer said, we're going to do something more incredible on the next album. You're going to write 5 songs. John Lennon's going to write 5 songs. And if you guys do it together, end up doing it together, that's okay. But I'm going to push you guys to do it on your own this time. And and Paul McCartney said that's screw it. I've never written by myself, and he got pissed off and he slammed the door and he left, and that's when he died that day. So the other song, so this whole Eleanor Rigby, the reason why he changed it to Eleanor Rigby is because him and John, when they ditched school, when they were in school together, they would often go to this like courtyard where there was a bunch of graves in this church area. And one of the graves they saw was Eleanor Rigby, which they didn't know who the person was, but they just always remembered that name because it was remind them of death. So every time he thought of death, he actually started having dreams that he was Eleanor Rigby, which was kind of strange too. So anyway, let's see. I'm trying to piece this all together. There's so many things going on in my mind reading this book, but I'm going to get it more in the future ones because it's going to all make sense. Because there's so much. So anyways, they were at the next day after he cried and screamed, they finally met together and they finally hashed out a deal with this new Paul McCartney. And this new Paul McCartney was a lot more talented musically than the old Paul McCartney, and he was also a lot more musically talented than most of the other Beatles. So he pushed their, in the Sgt. Pepper, which he released after that, he was Sgt. Pepper. He was in the middle. And if you notice the old Beatles, which are on the side, which are waxworks, all the Beatles were about the same height. But in the new one, the peppercorn guy, otherwise known as Billy Shears, was taller than them, and on the back they have him turned around and to heighten, to show that he is taller. That was a part of the message, that he isn't the Paul McCartney that you think he is. Anyways, there was a bunch of other things you can guess by the whole album cover. The girl that was running away to France, that hitchhiked that he crashed with, and everyone thinks because she was so beautiful, because they saw pictures after her, how beautiful she was, that maybe he was trying to flirt with her or whatever, and that's why he crashed, because he went through a red light. So that's that song about he didn't notice that the light was changed, the day in the life, was that he actually ran a red light. It wasn't that he blew his mind out of the car because his head got decapitated. So that was what it was about. A bunch of things in that song are also about everything that happened after that with John Lennon and Paul McCartney and the old Paul McCartney. But anyway, this girl was going to, if you look at the Beatles on the flowers, which is on the above the grave of Paul McCartney, because it's a funeral procession. They have all these previously dead people behind them, and then they have living people in the front, which is to show there's two actual realities that you don't know, because the other Paul McCartney on the side was actually the dead Paul McCartney, and it shows, you can see the difference. They purposely put them on that album together so you can see that they're two different people. His face was longer, his teeth are different, his nose is different. He has like me, detachable earlobes. The original Paul McCartney didn't have detachable earlobes. So if you see a side view of the 66 prior to 66 Paul McCartney and the after 66, you'll notice that their earlobes are different. You can't even do an operation to get that done. That's like impossible. They were actually going to try to operate and see if that was possible. So they sent the new Paul McCartney to do some operations on his teeth, get a lot of surgery to try to look as much like Paul McCartney's too, but they couldn't change his height. I was wondering why they didn't just say he had some kind of disease and he had to be in the hospital and he had to take some, which I've seen people even at his age, he was 20-something, have another growth spurt because they have to, based on some disease they have to take some, what are they called, hormones. So there's some kind of hormone treatment you can take, which you actually will, the side effect is you'll spurt in height. So they could have faked that one, but they didn't fake that. They didn't probably, maybe that wasn't around at that time, but now that's something that people can do if they really want to get a disease that almost kills them and then take hormones to, but that's the side effect. They spurt, they grow up even in their 20s or 30s, they can grow a few inches higher. But anyway, we all can grow inches higher in any age because there's no such thing as age. We're all 7 years old. We'll get into a different subject in another video. But this book starts to get into those kind of Illuminati ideas that are not Illuminati ideas. They're Druid ideas, and they're previously from the academies in the secret societies in Greece, which went to Rome and went all throughout Europe, creating the secret societies. So I was part of that academy. In my previous life, I was also one of the founders of the Rosicrucian and one of the main translators of the King James Bible. I didn't just say all of that, so if you thought I just said that, you just imagined that. So what I'm going to do is to go back to talking about what I'm talking about, because I just put that side note in there just to see if you guys were awake. Okay, so in this book, he goes into a lot of other things that are factual information that is so amazing that it's worth reading it, whether the actual story of Paul McCartney died is true or not. So if you're not yet willing to be, know, perceive, and receive the truth of what happened, you can still go and read the book, and you can still realize that there's so much in it that is amazingly pertinent to why you need to read it, because it talks about the whole creation of using the Beatles for other alternative motives. And luckily, this guy who became the new Paul McCartney realized that and had to break up the band. Because he was realizing it was starting to be used for all kinds of nefarious things, like promoting LSD. And it became a big part of the MK Ultra program in California and other areas. And that's why when Timothy Leary was fired from his position as a professor at Harvard University, for brain chemistry or brain psychology or whatever, he was the professor of Dr. Timothy Leary. Why he was then all of a sudden put up in big houses and stuff that he couldn't afford. And my dad actually, the guy whose body I took over at age 1 or 2's dad. I'm a walk-in, just like a few other walk-ins we'll talk about in another video, but I won't talk about it because we're not talking about walk-ins. Maybe this book will start talking about walk-ins, and I can start talking about walk-ins, because I don't want to get too off the subject. Let me drink a little water, because I start talking about things that I'm not supposed to be talking about on YouTube, I start needing to drink water. Okay, so we're not going to go into walk-ins. My body said no. Leave that for another day. Anyway, this guy who named the guy who I took over body, named him after Timothy Leary. So that father and that kid, before I came in, actually went to these Timothy Leary camps. He also took me to the Self-Realization Fellowship in Hollyweird. And that's part of the Druid cult too, that the reason they call Hollyweird or Hollywood, that's what the wizard's wand is. It's Hollywood, because the Druids took over the cult of America and now run it out of Hollywood, spinning reality as they please. So nothing is as it appears to be, and everything is as opposite of what it appears to be, and nothing is the opposite of what it appears to be. Beckham X. Nothing is the opposite of what it appears to be. Beckham X. Everything is the opposite of what it appears to be. So everything you thought was real, like all this bombing of other countries because they so-called had whatever the new lie is this month, whatever Hollywood could spin through the Druids that run it, who actually were breakaways from the Academy and breakaways from all the other secret societies that came from the Academy back before Socrates and in Socrates' time. Anyway, there's many secret societies even beyond that, probably from Atlantis, but I haven't fully gotten all the way into the Atlantis connection yet. So I'll get into that when I'm ready, when that downloads. But anyways, I think what I'm getting is Atlantis might be what a few now people are thinking. It might be a lot older than we thought it was, and it might have actually been over 10,000 to 20,000 years. There was a crustal realignment. The crustal plate moved on the globe, and where it was in the center of the Atlantic Ocean, it slowly moved south and became ice, and that's what Antarctica is, and that's why they don't want us to go to Antarctica. It's not because the world's flat, which is one of the crazy theories out there. So you can't ever go to Antarctica. The reason they don't want you to go to Antarctica is because it has technology that they don't want anyone to know about, and they're studying it, and it's all under the ice, because the Atlantis is under ice, and it was one of the most technologically advanced civilization, working with off-planet beings from other parts of the solar system and outside of the solar system. Anyway, I'm going way off. But anyway, this book goes way off too, so I kind of like that. It goes digressions back and forth, so you're like, where are we going? But I like that kind of stuff. I used to be the king of digressions at Soka University of America. All the professors would say I can take whatever we're talking about and go off on a tangent and take the whole class with me if I so desired, just because I didn't want to talk about whatever was being talked about. But somehow some of the professors knew that that was actually part of the healing experience of Soka University is to realize that everything's interconnected, nothing's disconnected. So there's nothing you can say off subject that isn't on subject, because everything's interrelated. That's why I am you and you are me and we are all together. Or actually, I am he as you are he and I am you, and it's all oneness. So chemistry and biology and astrophysics and pottery, underwater basket weaving, I don't think that even exists, but it's a joke. All of that is interrelated. So if you can't talk about underwater basket weaving in the middle of a science class, then you don't realize holistic thinking, because holistic thinking includes everything. So I can go off on many tangents, and I'm actually coming back to the main theme of the book. But anyway, I'm getting tired of talking, so I'm going to leave it for part 4, but that's my little bit about the book. You need to read it, Billy's Back. After I finish Billy's Back and reread it again, I'm going to kind of take apart the lyrics and tell you where each thing works. But almost every song was to try to tell you the truth, because they didn't want to be told that they were liars later on. And look at it. Who's going to be the last remaining Beatles? It's going to be the guy who's not even a Beatles. So John Lennon said the Fab Three and the other guy, jokingly, but he wasn't really jokingly, because the other guy was actually the new controller of the Fab Three that were left over. So in this first talk with John Lennon on Saturday, I just had a rememory. The Wednesday papers never come. So they paid this guy, and he shows up in another song, and I forget what song it is. Sailor Sam. They called him Sailor Sam. He was Samuel. He was the only person that got the whole story of Paul McCartney's death, and he was going to publish it in the papers. He was a reporter. But the producers of the Beatles said, "Listen, you have no evidence, and we're gonna file a libel suit, which will put you and your paper out of business if you don't cooperate. So what we're going to do is we're going to send you on a sailing trip anywhere in the world you want to go, on a yacht or wherever you want to go. We're going to pay for it all. We'll send you to the Bahamas, whatever you want to do." So this guy said, "Okay, cool. Pay for my whole trip." That's why they called him Sailor Sam. I think that's Band on the Run. No, I can't remember which one it was on. There was one other guy who was a detective who they also paid off, which also shows up in that same song that they say Sailor Sam. I can't remember which song. They're all blending into one song, because all of life is a song, and songs sing through me and sing through you, and they're all oneness. But anyway, I'll get back more on that later on. But anyways, he's at this on the Saturday. So the papers were going to come out next Wednesday, because he was fighting with this guy. He said, "You have no proof. Yes, that car that crashed looks a lot like Paul McCartney's car, but Paul McCartney is in Africa. He got tired of being on the trip. They just got back from their tour. He probably let someone borrow his car if that was his car. The girl who died in the car has no reference to, there's no one in the Beatles that knows her, and if you can find any connection," and they couldn't find a connection. So he said, "If you publish that he died, we're going to sue your paper and sue you for libel, and we're going to show you that the real McCartney is in Africa," because they were actually preparing this guy to go to Africa to do facial shifts of his face and other things to make him look more like the Paul McCartney, but he didn't really still look like the Paul McCartney completely. But anyway, so this guy said, "Okay, you pay for this trip wherever I want to sail around the world, and you pay for the yacht. Give me the yacht." They paid this guy off heavily not to produce the story, and he went along with it. And only the other detective that wasn't sure that he was not really dead said, "I want to see Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney's having a vacation. He's in Africa." And he said he doesn't want to talk to anybody because he just got back from the Revolver tour, and it was the hardest tour they've ever done. They've played more cities in 1 week than they've ever played in their life, except maybe when they first started before they became the Beatles, when they were playing in nightclubs in Hamburg, in like the Mizu Shobai, which we call in Japan the red light district, in the slutty part of town where the hookers and stuff do live shows too, and the band's playing the same damn stage where they're doing stripper shows. Anyway, that was a whole... The funny thing is, when they became famous, they became Pretty Boy, Clean Boys, because that's what the producer wanted them and said that would sell more. But they were actually all dressed in black, leather jackets. They were all never shaven. They were all looked like... They had big pompadours like all the rockabillys back then, and they were really not love songs. They were doing a lot of other songs besides just love songs. But then they said, "Oh, this is going to sell love songs. We're going to get you clean cut, shave you, put you in a suit." And they're like, "What? That's nothing like the Beatles." But anyway, they finally decided, okay, you're going to give us millions of dollars too? Okay, I guess we're going to just do whatever the fuck you want. And they started doing a lot of things they didn't really want to do. And that's why this new Paul McCartney decided he was going to change the whole band. And he became the leader of the band. And he had a talk with John Lennon on the Saturday after the the Friday he found out that his partner died. And he said, the first thing he said is, I will do everything to make this band next album and the future albums better than any other album you've ever done, but what you have to do is give me full control of the band. And John Lennon's like, what the fuck? You want full control of the band? We've never had a leader. Yes, some people think I'm the leader, but actually we're all a democratic system here. He says, I'm not talking about totalitarianism. I'm talking about the musical direction to make it was the first theme album. All the other albums were just kind of a bunch of songs jumbled together. And this was the first album, the Sgt. Pepper, where actually the lyrics were printed on an album, which it never had happened in history. After that, everyone started putting their lyrics in the album or on the album. I had an old record where David Bowie hand wrote all the lyrics. I think it was Hunky Dory on the backside. You can almost read most of his writing. If I were to do that, my handwriting, you probably wouldn't be able to read it because my lyrics, I can't even read them half the time. But anyway, someday I'm going to publish all my I do have my physical drafts of all I usually write on the back of like junk mail and the back of old bills and banking statements and boxes of gifts pretty girls gave to me. They were prettier back when they gave them to me. But anyway, I wrote love songs on the little box they gave me with a stuffed animal or something. I can't remember. And some cologne. It smelled like cologne. Anyway, all that stuff's going to be out there in my next books because my 60 plus songs are now going international, and I'm releasing my fourth or fifth music video, which is going to be beyond anything you've ever saw in any of my previous music videos. So just stay tuned because I am the new Tim Giannakis too. I am the artist formerly known as Tim Harada, formerly known as Tim Van Kampen, formerly known as Tim Giannakis. One of my stage names is Bajat Fach, which is my future perfect self from the year 2424 after David Bowie. And one of my other stage names is Major Tim to Ground Control. Watch my radio show. Okay, that's enough deviating from what I was going to talk about in the book, and I'll deviate more in the next video. I love you all. Peace out.